Here are three price scenarios that I'm still taking a look at when it comes to Flare's native token called FLR if we ever do see a fully fledged type of hypothetical altcoin season. Even though nothing I say is financial advice, the first scenario I want to take a look at is going to be maybe the idea of 15 cents. Now, that right there is around a 6.5x from here, and the market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be nearly $11 billion. Now, some people may be thinking, okay, who cares about around a 6.5x from here? Well, first of all, again, this is my first scenario that I want to talk about, but even besides that, even if let's say like Ethereum reaches 10 grand or let's say Bitcoin reaches 300 grand, in both cases, that's less than a 3x from here. So I wouldn't find that too disappointing, I would say. In my case, I can't speak on anyone's behalf. However, even besides that point, some people like to say, oh, but Flare doesn't have good fundamentals. Well, I want to disagree with that. Let me explain why. Because Flare is the blockchain for data. Now, some people may be thinking, who cares about this? Well, there's a little bit more to that. Like, for instance, it provides developers with decentralized access to data from other chains and the internet. So that's pretty cool. Not to mention, it has an aspect of EVM. Now, people may be thinking, why is having an aspect of EVM so cool? Well, it's because, again, Ethereum is very massive, and EVM stands for Ethereum Virtual Machine. But even besides that, again, it's an EVM smart contract platform with two data acquisition protocols. There's going to be FTSO, which is Flare Time Series Oracle, which is the native Oracle for Flare. And then we also take a look at something called the data connector. Now I'm going to explain the FTSO real quick. Again, Flare Time Series Oracle, because I think it's pretty interesting. Like, for instance, an Oracle, if we take a look at it, what is that, right? In this case, it's basically a data feed that brings data from off the chain. So that's off-chain data, and it brings that data over into the blockchain. Now, the purpose of this is not just because it's cool or something like that. There's actually a deeper meaning behind it because, for instance, many decentralized applications out there, they can't function properly without off-chain data. So that's very crucial. So again, I do like that when it comes to FTSO. I think it's pretty awesome nonetheless. But even besides that, the other data acquisition protocol I want to talk about is the data connector. Now, the data connector, if we take a look at it, is for trustless data proofs. This enables information from other blockchains and the internet to be used on Flare. So I think that's pretty awesome. I mean, I don't think that Flare is necessarily the coolest project of all time, but I still believe in it nonetheless because I like its utility. Again, it may not have the most hype, but I like the, again, use case when it comes to Flare. I don't feel like it's a project that's going to disappear if the fans or hype isn't there. This is just my mentality. But even besides all that, we take a look at historically, we've seen giants like Anchor and Google Cloud, be in the Flare ecosystem. So I think that is pretty impressive as well. So when I take a look at Flare, I think it's actually a pretty simple project for me to understand because I don't think it's overly complicated, which I don't think is a bad thing because other projects out there, they try to overcomplicate what they're trying to do. And sure, it may sound kind of cool, like people may be thinking, okay, what does this project really focus on? But then I think the novelty of that kind of wears off because at a certain point, I think a lot of people just want to know what the project is about and just kind of understand it, right? And again, if a project makes it overly complicated, it's just kind of, what are they doing really? So then I like it when it comes to Flare. I like its simplicity, I like its use case, and I like the positioning that it has in the market because I think it's pretty unique. So again, when I take a look at maybe the idea of 15 cents as my first price scenario, it wouldn't surprise me if that maybe were to happen. Now, the second price scenario I want to talk about is going to be 20 cents. Now, at 20 cents, that is around an 8.7x from here, so that's nearly a 9x, right? However, why don't I think that this is something that really would surprise me if we ever do see again a fully fledged type of altcoin season? It's because the market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be nearly $14.5 billion. Now, people may be thinking, well, who cares about that? Well, here's the thing. It's actually not such a massive market cap in the grand scheme of things because, like, for instance, even Dogecoin currently, right? I'm not saying a projection. I'm not saying what could it maybe do later on during the cycle. Dogecoin currently has a market cap that is in the tens of billions. Not to mention, we saw Dogecoin years ago in 2021 reach an all-time high market cap of around $80 billion. And I'm not saying that FLR is ever going to see that type of hype, during this cycle, if ever, right? But then at the same time, achieving like a glimpse of that, it doesn't seem too, I think, ridiculous Now, if the market cap needed was like, 100 billion or 200 billion, then, even I wouldn't even pay attention to something like that. But then again, this market cap doesn't seem like too outlandish to me. And again, when I take a look at something like FLR, people like to say, oh, 20 cents around an 8.7x from here. Well, again, FLR is not the small cap project or something like that. The market cap is pretty massive, and it's not necessarily kind of the biggest either, which that is what I'm looking for, right? What I'm looking for is something that's not too small but not too massive. So I think that is kind of the criteria that I'm looking at here when it comes to FLR. Again, some people out there may be into microcaps. They may be into some more the big caps, I would say, right? But then for me, I'm looking for something a little bit kind of in between, I would say kind of medium. I would kind of say that the market cap of FLR is, if I were to put an analogy on it, extra medium, But of course, I'm just saying that as kind of a reference a little bit. And this is, again, what I'm looking for. I like projects that have good fundamentals, a good community, and a pretty decently sized market cap that's not too small but not too massive. So again, FLR does fit that criteria for me, but I can't say it on anyone's behalf. However, the third price scenario I want to take a look at is ultimately 25 cents. And again, that right there, I get it, maybe slightly less than an 11x from here. However, the market cap at that point would actually already be pretty massive, like it would be nearly $18 billion. So again, I don't think it is something like too ridiculous, but it's not something too kind of, I would say, like small either. It's a pretty okay market cap, I think, at that point. Again, like I mentioned before, in that second price scenario section of the video, we've seen Dogecoin reach around $80 billion in market cap. So that's give or take around like 60 billion more than this. And that again was reached by Dogecoin like years ago back in 2021. And I think we have to take a look at the factors right now compared to back then. Like during the peak of the 2021 bull run, there was around 300 million crypto owners. Now we have over 600 million allegedly, and that's supposedly more than ever before in history. Keep in mind, we have this many crypto owners right now. It is not like, hey, what could it maybe do 4 months later or something like that? Imagine if we have this many, again, crypto owners currently, without ever seeing Bitcoin at the price of 150 grand, or 200, or 250, or even 300. We haven't even seen Ethereum at like, 7.5 grand or even 10 grand. And we still have this many crypto owners, way more than basically back in 2021. Imagine if we kind of see the market do a little bit better, right? Imagine if we saw Bitcoin reach greater heights. What would the amount of crypto owners be like then? If it was more than maybe what we have right now, it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. This is just my mentality. So I feel like maybe if we do ever see a fully fledged type of altcoin season this time around, or should I say this cycle, it wouldn't surprise me if it looked better than back in 2021. This is just my mentality. Now, some people may be thinking, okay, what is the timeline? How soon? Now, personally for me, I do not know the future. However, I can at least take a look at the past. Now, historically, altcoins, as a worst case scenario, they usually peak around 18 months after a Bitcoin halving event. So if we consider, right, how the last Bitcoin halving event happened last year in 2024, in April, so we add 18 months on top of that, that would mean October this year. Now, that's not a guaranteed thing, though, in my opinion. Like, I wouldn't think of that as 100% for sure or whatever, because I do not think that way. Like, I think that is, again, based off history. Who knows if that's going to happen this time around this cycle, if it ever even does. However, to me, it's not necessarily about finding the exact moment in time. It's more so just kind of preparing for a moment in time. So whether or not it happens maybe in October or November or December or maybe Q1 of next year or sometime around then, whatever the case is, my plan is going to stay the same, and that's dollar cost averaging, holding, and just waiting. That's it. So just by, being there, if there is a moment in which, FLR or let's say the altcoin space really does something in a pretty good way, I don't want to just be there on the sidelines and then trying to find the perfect moment and then it doesn't happen and then, I'm not prepared. I don't want that, right? I just want to be prepared. That's it. I'm not telling them to do anything when it comes to FLR. However, personally speaking, this is just what I'm doing. But ultimately, again, I am still a fan of the project. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I would greatly appreciate it. It's been Lee the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.